I call this talk Getting It Straight, and it's a reflection on Mark chapter 9, verses 30 to 37. This is what one Bible commentary says about Mark's Gospel. Among the four Gospels, Mark's was the most neglected by the early church. Indeed, no commentary was written on it until the 6th century. It is by far the shortest of the four Gospels, and 90% of its stories are found in either Matthew or Luke. It also has a rougher, less literary style than its peers. It's not nearly as elegant as Luke, for example, nor as thematically structured as Matthew. Mark also has a greater number of problem passages, difficult statements and actions by Jesus that Matthew and Luke tend to smooth out. The reading set for today might be described as one of those problem passages. Last week, in a talk covering part of Mark's chapter 8, I said this: in Mark's Gospel, there are two themes which are absolutely paramount. The first is Mark's overarching concern to establish who Jesus really is, to reveal his true identity. And the second is discipleship. Indeed, the issue of discipleship, which we meet in today's passage from chapter 9, is absolutely paramount. But it also belongs to that problem passage category. Having said that, I have to admit that I'm feeling sorry for the disciples at the moment, because in today's and recent readings, they seem to be having a rough time. And I'm not on my own in thinking that. One critic says this: throughout Mark, the disciples are the knuckleheads who just don't get it. Now, I think that's a bit harsh. Tom Wright, one-time Bishop of Durham, states in one of his commentaries, earlier in the Gospel, Jesus says things to them in code, and they didn't get it. The parables were secret, hidden messages, which they only gradually learnt how to understand. When Jesus warned them about the leaven of the Pharisees, they thought they were being told off for forgetting to bring the bread for breakfast. Knowing and not knowing. Understanding and not understanding. These are woven throughout chapters 8 and 9. For example, in chapter 8, how they're supposed to deal with this question from Jesus: who do you say that I am? And having muddled their way through that one, in today's reading it becomes even more difficult when Jesus speaks of the Son of Man. For them, Jesus comes as a human to conquer his enemies, not to be handed over into the hands of men so that they may kill him. That is not their understanding of the Messiah at all. They may be part of Jesus' most private inner circle, but they are amongst the last to comprehend what Jesus is all about. And so it is that through frustration and ignorance, they begin to argue amongst themselves, not daring to ask Jesus for an explanation, because they are afraid to do so. Will they be chastised yet again? They sidestep the real questions they need to ask, and they squabble over who knows best, over petty issues of rank and status. They focus on posturing on who amongst them is right. Meanwhile, what about Jesus' reaction? Could he too be frustrated and even disappointed at their behaviour? At this point, whilst we may be inwardly tutting at the disciples, let's stop and ask ourselves some questions. Have we ever reacted in the same way as the disciples? When, maybe, God has been trying to say something to us, how good have we been at listening? In the context of our church membership and in our communities, have we seen or sensed things where our involvement would make the situation easier or better? If we turn away in that situation, are we saying no to God, just as the disciples were saying no to Jesus? Returning to today's reading, it seems inevitably that in the end it falls to Jesus to point the way, with simple, gentle words and actions. There is no chiding or anger here, and his words are easy to understand. They are spoken in love, and they apply to anyone and everyone. Simply this: if anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and the servant of all. Similarly, the action of Jesus in taking a small child in his arms with the words, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." With these words, it is clear that for Jesus, the notion of greatness exists in the rightness of our relationships. And that begins with our relationship with God. When that is right, it will then be translated into action. If we apply this to ourselves in our own modern context, surely, in these present circumstances, we have to admit that we have never before had such an opportunity to embrace and apply the intent of Jesus' words, both in our homes, our churches, our communities, and beyond. And to finish with, this prayer seems to say it all. Lord, gracious God, who does not put us in any order, be with us as we spend time with one another and with you. Help us to listen to you as you speak to us, and as you challenge us, love us and encourage us. May we fulfill your will and reflect your glory. Amen.